Hey everyone, if you've been following along in our class, you can tell me that we've got an exam, a midterm exam on the not so distant horizon. And the point of this video is to kind of get you prepared, what you can expect, what you need to do for preparation purposes, ways that you can engage these questions. So what I want you to do, if you haven't done so already, because basically what I'm going to be doing is going through the review guide with you. You can put me on pause if you need to, go into Canvas, click on the modules, and then scroll down to the exam module of Canvas, download or click on the midterm exam review guide. That's going to be your one-stop shop for preparation purposes. And again, put me on pause if you need to. I'm not going to go anywhere. So what you need to understand first and foremost is that the exam is going to consist of two parts, and these parts are independent of one another. The multiple choice section will be taken independently of the essay section. Both sections will have time limits on them, and I'll talk about that as we get further along in this segment. But for the time being, understand that I don't care which order that you do them. You can see the specified due date on the syllabus or in Canvas. Doesn't matter to me if you do the essay first, the multiple choice first, doesn't matter which you do first, and I also don't care if you take a break in between the two sections. If you want to go have lunch in between the two sections, that's perfectly fine. As long as both sections are done by that specified date, you're in good shape, okay? So let's start out with the multiple choice section. The first thing you need to understand is you're going to see 10 questions. And the second thing that you need to understand is you're going to have 25 minutes to complete these 10 questions. And I know what you might be thinking. That's a very quick turnaround time, but understand, this is going to translate to a little bit more than 2 minutes per question, and I've been doing this for a long time. In my opinion, if you're spending much more than about 2 minutes per question, you're probably overthinking it. In any case, it's plenty of time to get this done in the specified amount of time. But when it comes to preparation, I want to draw your attention to the term bank of the review guide. Check out the terms in that term bank. Now, they ought to look pretty familiar to you, especially if you've been following along closely with our lecture throughout this semester. Those video lectures, those things have been popping up at you over the course of the last few weeks. Those terms are going to be the building blocks of my exam. And the thing about this is, I know that list looks really long and intimidating right now, but you probably know more than what you're giving yourself credit for. What I would do if I were you, if I had to take this exam, the way that I would approach this is I would use note cards. I'm a very visual learner, I bet you are too. And on the front of that note card, write down the term. For example, Knights of Labor, right? And then flip it over. And on the back of that note card, what I want you to do is write down, be very deliberate here, 5 words or fewer, 5 words that remind you what that term means in the context of our class. So when it comes to Knights of Labor, you know, Gilded Age comes to mind, unionism comes to mind, unionism for all. If you rethink back to that point in the class, the Knights of Labor wanted to organize skilled workers and unskilled workers. They wanted to offer unionism to people that were of the male variety, but also to the ladies as well. Immigrant-born workers, native-born workers, you get the idea. That's what we meant by unionism for all, okay? You could make a very similar case for something like political machine. 5 words or fewer that remind your brain as to what that term means in the bigger, broader picture, okay? So political machine is a relationship where votes are traded for political favors. Now that may or may not translate into 5 words, but you generally get the point that I'm trying to make here, okay? So once again, those are the building blocks of my exam, and if you can walk through those, you have a rough understanding of what each of them are and how they fit into the contours of our class, you're in very good shape as we head into the multiple choice section, all right? The essay section, once again, this is independent of multiple choice. The essay section is anything that requires you to type out a sentence. So there's going to be a few short answer questions that you'll answer in 2 to 4 sentences, and there's going to be one long answer essay. So let's start out with the short answer questions. These are questions that you can answer in 2 or 4 sentences. Now, if you write more than that, will I read more? Of course I'll read more. If you write 1 sentence, does that mean that you fail the question? No, of course not. It's just me suggesting if I had to answer this, I'd plan on 2 to 4 sentences, okay? So if you scroll down to the middle of the review guide, you're going to see 4 questions listed. The good news here is that 3 of those questions, as they appear today, this moment, right now, they will appear on the exam. Nothing's going to change. The only thing that will change is one of these guys is going to disappear, and I'm not going to tell you which one. So what that means for you today is you need to choose 3. 3 that you're looking at of the 4 listed right now. If you choose 3, then you are going to be well prepared going into this exam. What this means is that even if you guess wrong and the one that you threw out, for whatever reason that you threw it out, it ends up appearing on the exam, you still have a few that you have prepared for, in theory anyway, and you are ready to answer them, okay? Now, if you look at the review guide, that first question involving how America got transformed into an industrial society, think back to those first few lectures, right? I was talking to you about how huge the railroad was and how we lay hundreds of thousands of miles of railroad tracks in the aftermath of the Civil War. And not only was that an infrastructure for an industrial America, but you needed steel and you needed timber and you needed oil and you needed finance, and all of these other interrelated industries are going to boom primarily because of the railroad. So understand, railroad is a really key factor in the industrialization of America. If you look at the second question there, it's talking to you about the Spanish-American War that's going to break out in the late 1890s. Of course, if you think back to that period, there were people that really did have a humanitarian concern for the suffering of the island nation 90 miles off the coast of Florida, Cuba, right? But there were other people that wanted the business of Cuba. Cuba was a subtropical environment, so there were fruits and other forms of produce that grew very well there. Sugar grew very well there, but maybe most importantly of all, we liked the fact that it was centrally located in the Caribbean. And so when we got wind of what the Spanish were doing and, newspapers are flying off of shelves and what's coming to be known as yellow journalism, in addition to calling your senator about the suffering of the Cuban people, there's a lot of people that are wanting Cuba because it's so centrally located, giving us a very strategic advantage in that part of the world. The Spanish controlled it, we wanted it, we went to war with the Spanish, and ultimately what we got in the aftermath of the Spanish-American War was Spanish colonies. So that's very important that you understand that, and if you choose that question, Spanish colonies are going to be a driver in your answer. Now, the next question is going to ask you about inequality and what role inequality played in American life. I need you to understand that institutionalization is a really big feature within inequality and the making of inequality in the late 19th century. It's not just random haphazard inequality, it's inequality with a system behind it. Think about the cult of true womanhood. Woman's natural role was in the home, and it was unthinkable for a lady to participate in politics or the job market or anything like that, really. Okay, so that's what I mean when I say institutionalization. You could make a very similar case for something like the Dawes Act or Jim Crow. These are segregationist policies that are designed to keep people out of specific institutions and even specific places. So that's what I'm talking about when I say institutionalized inequality, okay? Lastly, you've got this issue involving the economy growing by leaps and bounds, and to sustain it, what we were going to do was generally what was going to happen to the indigenous populations, all right? I had made mention of this in those video lectures entitled The Development of either the Great Plains or the Development of the Far West. Anytime you see an indigenous population that kind of gets in the way of anything whatsoever, progress broadly defined, it's generally shoved to the side to make room for this economic progress. So you need to keep that in your mind. What happens to the Native Americans? What happened to the buffalo? What would happen to the natural environment, the topography? What happened to all those things as progress came to that part of North America, okay? So again, you can write more than 4 sentences. That's not going to be a problem. I've seen people adequately answer the questions in a single sentence, but if this is me, I'd plan on about 2 to 4 sentences, okay? I hope that makes sense. Lastly, you're going to have one long answer essay, and this thing is not going to change. What you see right now is what's going to show up to you when you open up the exam as it goes live. And the other thing that I wanted to mention while I have your attention is I don't really care how you answer this question. If you think that the growth of government is just the worst thing in the world, then you need to tell me that. You need to take a very firm stance on that, and you need to support that assertion with actual concrete evidence. I've seen people answer it both ways very, very effectively. There are other people that think that the growth of government's a good thing and they support their answer very, very well. All I really care about is that you take that you take evidence and you link it to what you're trying to say. I've also seen people have some sort of combination of the two. It was a good idea in this way, but it had these unanticipated consequences in this other way. And so you can see that there's no one right way to answer it, but there are wrong ways. I want to say something when it comes to this whole issue of the 1 to 3 pages. Again, that's a suggestion. I'm not saying that if you write me only 1 page, that qualifies for a C, and if you write me 4 pages, then that's an A+. It's not like that. It's merely a suggestion, okay? What I really, really care about, is that you're actually engaging the central question and you're using evidence to support it. So, for example, if you think that the growth of government is good, then you need to talk to me about things like Roosevelt's Square Deal and how this was a regulation of the marketplace, and how what this did was it kind of created an economy that at least worked for more people, as opposed to the Gilded Age when only a select few robber baron industrialists were able to really make their way in this economy. Talk to me about the Pure Food and Drug Act. Talk to me about Woodrow Wilson's New Freedom and his breaking up of several of these banks. That's what you need to do if you believe that the growth of government was good and it worked for people like our friend Jurgis Rudkis. Now, on the flip side, if you think that the growth of government was a bad thing and it led to more mistakes than not, then you need to talk to me about things like the Sedition Act, or maybe something like the Espionage Act. Think back to World War I. If you think about those video lectures, both World War I as well as the legacy of World War I, what you should be able to remember is the fact that we're worried about spying on the American people, that these German-born Americans were sending our secrets back over there to their fatherland, and that was a problem. And so ultimately what we're going to do is we're going to give the federal government a lot more ability and power to monitor American behavior, and that's going to be through the Espionage Act. It's kind of funny, but we're going to counteract the spies by spying on more Americans. And as I said in that video lecture, the only thing worse than the Espionage Act was the Sedition Act, because it had such a broad definition of what sedition anti-government rhetoric was. It could mean something like we should overthrow the government, or it could mean something like I don't think that Woodrow Wilson's doing a very good job as being president. It was basically completely subjective, and Wilson's going to arrest and detain dozens of political opponents throughout the course of the war years. So if you believe that the growth of government was problematic and bad, those are a couple examples that you can incorporate into your analysis. So as you can see, not only are there a number of different ways of answering this question and doing a good job of it, what you really need to do is to sit down and think about this on a personal level. Where are you on this matter? Once again, I don't really care what you think I think. What I care about, and the best papers are going to emphasize what you think, and most importantly of all, why you think it. All right? So the essay section is also timed, and you're going to have 90 minutes, 90, as in an hour and a half, to complete this section of the exam. If you want to work on that essay question ahead of time, save it in a document and then kind of revise it, add a little bit to it night by night as the exam due date approaches, that's perfectly fine, that's perfectly reasonable. Frankly, that's what I would do. And actually, that's what I'm hoping many of you do as well. Because this is a way, if you think about it, it's a way of pre-writing. It's a way of sort of thinking, revising, coming back, re-revising, and that's generally a skill that I want you to develop over the course of this semester. So that's a good thing. And if you wanted to go ahead and copy and paste your answer that you've been developing over the course of several days, you're perfectly entitled to do that. I actually encourage you to do that. So if you want to do it that way, that's fine. If you want to just kind of sit down and start it from scratch and build your essay answer from the ground up, that's also perfectly acceptable. An hour and a half, in my opinion, is more than enough time to take care of your business on this particular assignment. So to each his own or her own, okay? Anyway, I hope that this video has been helpful when it comes to not only preparing you, but easing your mind. It's not as intimidating as it probably looks, it probably seems right now. So if you have any other questions that I didn't happen to cover on this segment, please do not hesitate to let me know. I hope that preparation is going well for you.